Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, my name is T.L. Robinson. I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States on the East Coast. And my story is pretty simple. I am someone who was victimized by sexual violence and was not prepared to handle the survivorship journey in the aftermath of that. So in trying to get myself well, I went on a multi-year journey of understanding sexual violence. What does that mean to a survivor? How do I get on a good path of healing? And what does this mean for the community? My lack of understanding and preparedness in surviving sexual violence is, I think, what leaves the door wide open for people to be harmed, for perpetrators to persist, and for this crime to continue on via the generations. So in my work, in trying to get well, I started a company called GOTU, which is a platform to help empower and educate survivors of sexual violence so we can collectively work together to end this global epidemic. In doing that, I've spent the last 7 years surviving, the last 6 years doing research on sexual violence, the last 5 years building community, all to get to the point of understanding what it is and then speaking out and getting to the root cause of understanding what sexual violence really is and what it means. And I've been in a unique position because prior to being victimized, I worked in the technology space. My career meant that I had to do research. I had to speak to people who had a unique problem, and it was my team's responsibility to build solutions to that problem. So part of my healing, part of my recovery after being victimized was utilizing my skills in my career to put together information, to do research, to talk to people, to really get to the basis of it. And where I sit today is working on that root cause, which means we end silence, we educate our children and ourselves on what sexual violence truly means to our communities. And then we help get the word out to remove shame from survivors and put it on the people who actually perpetrate the crime. And then how do we build each other up so we find value in ourselves and in one another so that we can help identify these potential perpetrators. We can maybe put them into rehabilitative places so they cannot reoffend, especially when they are children. And then we can work within 2 generations to help end this crime of sexual violence. I can say that being victimized was never anything that I saw for myself in my life based upon what I knew about sexual violence. So being victimized and getting on the path again of wellness and recovery has truly been eye-opening for me and the thousands of people across the globe that I've had an opportunity to connect with. So it's really great to be here today to talk about this really important topic that impacts so many people across the globe, predominantly women and children, and move to a course of action of how can we collectively work together to eradicate it.
Thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us, TL. I know it takes a lot of courage for somebody who's gone through what you went through to pluck up the courage and share. So, can you share the moment when you realized that speaking out about your experience was not just about survival, but it's a calling?
For me, it calling it a calling is a little unique. For me, I took tremendous umbrage to being harmed, if that makes sense. And I think all people who have been harmed take great offense to that violation, to that crossing of the boundary. And it was learning again about sexual violence for myself, having an opportunity to build community and learn how widespread it was. And then talking to local representatives, um, and then going to Capitol Hill on April 1st in 2019 and saying, hey, there are survivors out here who really need help. In having that conversation with representatives and having them say to me that they don't have the resources or the capacity to own this responsibility, that it needs to be a much larger movement before they will get engaged. And I took that as a challenge of, if they want something grassroots, if they want more people to be involved, then it makes sense that as a person who was harmed can collectively work with other people to make that happen. And that's exactly what I'm doing.
So, how did your background in technology and research influence the way that you approached your survivorship journey?
It's a people first initiative. Even in technological spaces, we are tapped with talking to the people who actually have the problem, so we can understand the nuance, we can understand the different ways this problem shows up in the full population of people who actually have this problem. So it's our responsibility to figure that out. I utilize that same approach in my work with GOTU, in being able to do that and put that work together. So really, as a survivor and working with other survivors, I collectively did that. And it's, again, people who are primarily harmed by this crime is who I connect with. And that's the influence, that's the scope, and that's the foundation for it all.
Now, you say that we can end this epidemic of sexual violence in 2 generations. What makes you so confident that this is possible?
The confidence comes in the work that I've done in that research, and understanding that perpetrators are primarily made, not born. So if we can come from that aspect of understanding that with children that come from harmful environments, children that realize neglect, children who themselves are victimized, are the crux of people who will grow up and potentially come in to violate, that if we can work with children, if we can educate them, if we can empower them, if we can keep them safe, then I truly feel like we can work to eradicate this within the next generations. Think about children who are harmed. If we can get them support, if we can get them rehabilitation, then they're primarily educated. Those are the people who can go out and evangelize to, hey, this is how I was harmed, but I understand this, and be role models to other people, in addition to parents. So think about that 2 generations over, and how widespread that messaging and support can be. I feel like that's a real movement, that, and a goal that can be achieved.
Yeah. So, what are the most common misconceptions about survivors that you want to shatter?
The most common, I would say, is that there's something that we did to deserve the harm that was perpetrated against us. In society, it's a victim blaming society that essentially says we've done something, we've worn something, we were at a certain place, we were
Yeah.
engaging with people that we should not have been engaging with. And that just absolutely is not true.
Yeah.
The sexual violence is about control, power, and domination. It's not about attraction or anything of that nature. So those are the 2 biggest things that I would like to dispel about this crime.
Mhm. It's a big story to tell. Now, silence is a recurring theme in your story. Why do you believe that silence is the most dangerous weapon?
I think silence is the most dangerous weapon that perpetrators have, because they can use that as a shield to continue to perpetrate their crimes. If the people who are aware that they are perpetrators do not speak, then people are not warned. If the people who are harmed are silent, then we don't know that they need help and support, and it leaves the door open for the perpetrator to continue to commit their crimes. And if the perpetrators themselves are silent, then they have a certain identity that they can use to get close to people, get our guards down, and then perpetrate this crime. And I use the example of the person who harmed me is very real, that people were aware that he was a perpetrator, especially in his youth, and they thought it was something he grew out of, and he had not. The victims that he had, they were silent because they were scared of him. And these are people who I knew, and they did not say anything. So this person who went to church every Sunday, took his mother to church. He was a diligent parent. He was a provider and a protector to other people in the family and in the community, was someone that I never would have ever suspected as being a perpetrator. So when he got close to me and asked me for help, of course, I would go help someone that I know if they asked for help. And it's when I went to go help him that he violated me. And it was after I spoke out to start protecting other people from him that people started coming forward. And I started learning that people knew what he was the whole time. They were silent. And it's frustrating for me because it's learning I could have been saved if people would have used their voice. And for me, I do not ever want to be in a space where another person is harmed who could have been saved if I would have spoken up. So that is my cause. That is my effort. That is my why, to save people by using my voice.
So how did your experience with the justice system shape your perspective on survivor advocacy?
That is a very interesting question, because I will say the justice system and how it actually operates is different than how we believe it operates based upon what we see on television or the people we know, or maybe even our minor dealings with it. I say that dealing with the justice system is very much a marathon, not a sprint. The justice system, especially here in the United States, where it's innocent until proven guilty, that means those of us that come up with allegations and come forward with allegations, we are dishonest until it is proven that we are honest, and that there are certain laws in place that prevent the full picture from being provided in court. I would say, through, again, my experience going through the legal system to get justice against the person who harmed me, it was a long process. There are certain benefits that are provided to a defendant under innocent until proven guilty that allows them to push the sentence out, that allows them to not have the full story told about them. And when I say that specifically, there was evidence in this particular case that was not allowed in court or put in front of the jury for them to understand that he actually committed the crime against me. So that was something I had to contend with, is that the full truth was not there. In the state where I was harmed, another example is because he did not have a record or a conviction on his record, he was granted probation for the crime committed against me. And if he successfully completes that probation, it's as if these charges never happened. It's as if court never happened, and he walks away free and clear with the door open to harm someone else, and this trial and these allegations not coming up in that future case. So my view of the criminal justice system is it is not the victim justice system. It is truly, we have to work, we have to be patient, we have to be diligent, and we have to work tooth and nail in order to get in front of a judge and in a court and really fight for ourselves. The biggest thing I learned is no one is coming to save me with the justice system. I had to fight and build community and build relationships in order just to even get this brought to trial. So I would say the biggest lesson learned is understand the system and how it truly works, get resources, so then you can be better prepared for what that experience truly is and what it means and what it's like.
So what global patterns have you uncovered in your research on sex crimes across 7 countries?
The consistent thing that I've noticed is the inconsistency in a definition of what constitutes sexual violence or sexual harm. Another inconsistency is in specific jurisdictions, what is actually considered a crime when it comes to sexual violence. Even within the United States, we can have a county right next to another county within a state, and they will have 2 different definitions of what's considered a crime within the same state. And that is consistent across the globe. The other consistency is silence. And that's because of shame and embarrassment that we as survivors take on. And that
Yeah.
shame and embarrassment does not belong to us. It belongs to the person who perpetrated the crime, all of those persons who have perpetrated the crime. So there is a socialization, again, of it's something we wore, something we did that makes it our fault. And the sooner we can shift the narrative and get that truth out there, I think the sooner we can have different outcomes when it comes to law, when it comes to our communities, when it comes to ownership, and when it comes to people no longer being silent or inactive bystanders to becoming active bystanders who are then proactive. So those are the three biggest things that I've seen in the various countries that I've been to researching sexual violence. I would say the other consistency on a positive note is that people are aware that it is something that should not be happening, that it's bad, and they want to do something about it, but they aren't equipped with information or tools to do something about it. So that's another thing at work, doing my work at GOTU and with GOTU is putting out our blog to share information and equip people in unique ways to say, here's what this means, here's what you can do, and here's how you can be empowered.
So let's talk about GoTo for a minute. What inspired you to create this platform, and what do you hope to achieve with the platform and the community you've put together?
So with GoTo, there are three verticals. There is a mobile app that's going to be launched later this year, and that's an anonymous community where survivors can connect across the globe and be able to contact and connect with people who've been harmed. As survivors, there is just a unique conversation that we can have that we understand that has less social emotional labor in trying to explain things and our feelings. So that's launched later this year. The next is the blog, and that comes out every week, and it's free information where, again, we're educating and empowering people on the facts and what they can do, and it's from the survivor perspective. So it's understanding what it's like to go back into the workforce. What does it mean to not be believed by people, and the impact that it can have on us, and information from that perspective. And then next is a biennial report that goes out every 2 years where we talk about different aspects of survivorship in the community at large. Our first report went out in 2022, and it was really defining sexual violence and what does that impact have on survivors. And it's for survivors who may not have an opportunity to go to therapy or get access to a trauma-informed resource, and even other people who support us. So it takes the labor, again, off of survivors and helps people truly understand what survivorship is and what the crime does to the person. And then the 2024 report is how do structured institutions like schools and businesses, how can they improve so that survivors can be successful in those environments? So in doing that work, it has been very impactful. And I started it, to your original question, because in contacting survivors, information like this really didn't exist in a consolidated space. A lot of that information is academic in nature, too difficult to sort through, and it doesn't necessarily give us direct connection to survivors and information we need to move forward. So that's really how I started it. Again, was connecting and talking to people and realizing that we just didn't have this before.
Now, survivorship often focuses on healing, but you speak of recovering the whole self.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
With sexual violence, I don't think people really understand that it is a brain injury in addition to a body injury from the harm suffered from the actual attack. The trauma itself chemically rewires the brain, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. And that chemical rewiring impacts our ability to regulate our emotions. It impacts our ability to take in information and process it. It shifts how we see the world in our regulation of self and body. And when you just heal the body, you heal maybe the wounds. But when we talk about recovery, it is a full reclamation of who we are supposed to be. When harmed, we know we're not going to go back to the person that we were before we were harmed. But in recovery, we have a better opportunity to grow into who we are meant to be and not let that trauma control our everyday life. It is essentially a chemical rewiring of the brain to help us get back to control, to undo the effects of the irregular thinking, maybe not having a mental health disorder, but we can minimize the episodes that may show up that cause us to be inconsistent or unstable. So I think recovery is about understanding the physical, but also the mental, emotional, and social aspects as well. And it's that recovery that allows us to have a fuller life. I will say in the beginning, I worked on healing because that was the only word that I knew. That was the only standard language I had. But again, when I did more research, when I dug into myself, when I sat down and assessed, I'm healing, but I still don't feel whole. There are some things missing. What are the things? Then I said, this more feels like recovery. I mean, think about professional athletes when they're hurt. We don't say, oh, the person is healing. We say they are in recovery. They are getting back to their whole self. They're fixing their body. They're fixing their mind. They're fixing any triggers they had. If they got hurt playing, how do they go back into the arena in the same space where they got hurt and still be successful? So I think it's the same language we have to use as survivors. How do we heal the body? But how do we go back out into the world and still be successful? And I think that comes through recovery.
So, what role do bystanders or secondary survivors play in changing the narrative of sexual violence?
That's a good question. And I think for the secondary survivors are the people who support us. They're also impacted by the crime, but not directly impacted by the crime. So that could be, for me, it's my parents and my siblings. For people, it could be like their intimate partner, their spouse, or even their children who get harmed because we are harmed and we are not the best versions of ourselves as we're going through our wellness journey. And getting to a place of recovery. So I think for bystanders and for secondary survivors, it's understanding the violence and what does that mean? Again, knowing it's about control and domination and not sexual gratification. Putting the responsibility on the people who commit the crime and being patient and understanding in accepting the reality of the situation that the person who is harmed is not the same person that they knew. We are learning ourselves in this new aspect of our lives as people who have been harmed. So we're discovering who we are and what we like and what we don't like and what our triggers are in the same way that they are. So for those people, they can be patient. They can give us buffer. They can build cushion around us to help protect us from, outward elements and people and situations as we're trying to figure things out and move with us so we can move as a unit. But also recognizing their feelings and how they're impacted as well, because there is a great impact to them. So I think that to be a support is for everyone to be aware of how they're feeling, be aware of how they're impacted, work to be educated on the facts, and then be honest in conversation and be patient in conversation. But I also think the biggest aspect is for secondary survivors and bystanders to not center themselves in the trauma. Sometimes we see people who are secondary survivors who are harmed move the focus away from the person who's actually living through the crime. And then those feelings get diminished and suppressed, and that can create friction in relationships. So I think all of those things collectively can help improve the situation as a whole. And also being harmed, that for me, living through it, I personally don't want to go through it again. I don't want to have awareness that another person might go through it and I've said nothing. So I think that makes you proactive in a sense. Once you get comfortable, once you feel safe, that's important, you can become proactive.
So how do you balance the need to tell the raw truth with the responsibility and not to re-traumatize yourself or your audience?
That's a really good question. And I say it takes practice. It takes a lot of therapy. I will say that in the beginning, I just told people I was harmed. I did not tell the whole story. I absolutely will not go into detail about things. So it takes practice. It takes recovery and a sense of getting comfortable with accepting the truth and what that means for each person. And then saying what is necessary, what information am I trying to convey in a space of maybe holding back. I don't think the details are necessary. And from a survivor's perspective, you don't have to share that. But I also think from a person who learns that a person is a survivor, it's important to be sensitive and not ask for details.
Right.
So you can say, I was harmed. Here's how I am impacted. Here's what my needs are.
Yes.
Here's what I ask of you, and then have the other people be honest in saying, yes, I can provide that, or no, I cannot provide that. And then the conversation around how can we still be in relationship with one another, and how does that make sense? And I think that is important. The most important piece when it comes to survivorship is having the awareness and the sensitivity to it. And then again, the education of how to be proactive in helping
Mhm.
support survivors and stop it. I will say in the beginning, I was not always successful at not re-traumatizing myself or other people when I share the story, because sometimes that trauma can take over. And this is
Yes.
where, again, I think recovery is important, because when you can recover, you know when you're getting to an edge, or you can
Mhm.
define for yourself, here's my boundaries of what I'm going to tell, and here's my stopping point. And I
Okay.
actually go over that in my workbook, Unbroken, that I'm releasing in another 30 days as well, to talk about how survivors can recover themselves and go through exercises and understand what their boundaries and what their needs are, how to build
Yeah.
community for themselves, so how they can independently grow and take control over that for themselves.
That's just amazing. It's a lot of work that you've put into this.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to someone who believes that sexual violence doesn't happen in their community?
I would say I understand why they believe that, because I used to be that person. I was the person who went to college. I went to graduate school. I had a very nice job in tech. I had a nice home, lived in a good community, and I thought I was very far removed from this type of crime. I
Mhm.
was very ignorant into understanding that in the United States alone, 1 in 3 women is victimized by sexual violence, and 1 in 6 men are victimized. Over 90% of victimizations happen from people that we know. These are the people who get close to us and can attack us when our defenses are down. It's
Mhm.
easier for them to attack us than a stranger, because our guard is up with a stranger. Had I known that, I would have looked at it differently. I was a
Mhm.
poster child of ignorance, and I would actually say arrogance, because I thought the way that I lived my life precluded me from this violence. So again, I
Mhm.
would say I understand why, but I would say get educated again on the facts, and even the facts that I just shared. Understand the facts of the region of where you live, and you will know that most of the victimizations happen from someone known to you. It's a greater number of victimizations that will happen from a family member or an intimate partner, the people you are in the closest proximity to, that will hurt you. Um, Having that information, having this lived experience, I see it very differently now, that this is a crime that does not discriminate on age. It does not discriminate on educational background. It does not discriminate on gender identity. It does not discriminate on whether or not you go to a religious house on a certain day of the week and you praise your higher power, your God, periodically. Everyone can be harmed. Ultimately,
Yeah.
98% of these, 93 to 98% of the people harmed are women and children, but men are harmed as well. And I believe the number for them is higher. They're just not coming forward because of the stigma of men being harmed, and what does that look like in society. So
Mhm.
for anyone who does not believe that they are at risk, I am here to give you a cautionary tale. You are potentially at risk. If you
Mhm.
do not know anyone who has been harmed, I will challenge that to say you just don't know anyone who has chosen to disclose to you that they have been harmed. And that
Mhm.
is a sobering reality to really think about. Because after I shared with the people in my circle that I was harmed, the first 5 people I told, 4 out of 5 were victimized persons.
Oh,
And
wow.
then when I told more people, I would say over 80% had been victimized.
It's such a big, big problem. So let's end our podcast with two last questions. And it's a bit of
Okay.
a thought experiment. In the
Mhm.
first one, I'm going to teleport you back to the younger you, a
Mm.
young woman who found herself in the middle of a storm.
Yeah.
Just in case there's somebody who's listening right now who's going through something similar. If you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
That's a really good question. And I would say the first nugget is going to be the nugget that the nurse gave me at the emergency room when I had to go seek help. The first nugget is you are going to survive this. It may not feel like it right now, but you are going to survive this. You will have to fight the biggest fight of your life, but you are going to survive this. The second nugget is find community. Even if you don't have maybe familial support or friend support, there are resources that the hospital can provide, that maybe even the police can provide. And if you go to the police, you don't have to say that a crime was committed, especially if you fear the person who has harmed you. But you can find local community that can help get you on your feet. Even at GOTU, that is getontheup.com. There are resources there that can help move you forward. So I would say this is not something to do alone. It may feel easy to isolate. It may feel easy to sweep it under the rug. It may feel easy to stand yourself up and just move forward and act like it did not happen. I will say to you, it will always catch up to you and it will find you. So please get community. Please work to address and get some help for yourself so you can get control of it and not have it control your life. The third nugget is that you are important, that you are valuable and you are worth fighting for. So please don't ever give up on yourself. Don't let anyone dissuade you from knowing that you are valuable and fighting for yourself in the ways that make sense for you. I know not everyone will want to go to court. I know not everyone will want to disclose publicly, but there are things that you're going to need as a person who has gone through this, that is going to make you feel whole. Figure out what that is for yourself and use your community to help you work towards that. And those are the three nuggets that I would give anyone who is fresh in this storm.
That's awesome. The last question is futuristic. And I'm going to teleport you into the future. And we are going to go and meet the 90-year-old you. By then, these two generations you talked about have passed.
Yeah.
Things have changed in the world. If you could go and sit and have a conversation with a 90-year-old you, based on your work and how you're living your life and trying to leave the planet a better place, what will you say to this amazing woman when you finally meet her?
The one thing that I would say to her would be thank you. That 90-year-old woman who fought the fight, she survived it all and she recovered herself and she never gave up. So I would just tell her thank you.
That's powerful. And you will have touched on so many lives with your advocacy, with the work that you're doing. I know it's challenging. I know it's not easy to wake up every day and do what you do. But I think if you focus on her, it will all have been worthwhile. So thank you for coming online and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you allowing me this space and this platform.
It's an absolute pleasure. We have a couple of people who have been watching and chiming in online. Quentin, thank you for your comment. It is a sad story. Unfortunately, it is more common than uncommon for most women. I can say with all the women that I talk to, myself included, 8 out of 10 women have been sexually violated in some way. In childhood, in adulthood, it is such a common thing, but something has to change. And TL, you're really on the cutting edge of helping bring about that change. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. I have shared TL's details in the comments of the podcast, her LinkedIn profile, her website. Please reach out if you need support, community, and help, or if you know someone who does. Like we said, if you were to ask 5 people, 4 to 3 of the people you know have gone through an experience. So please share this podcast and help it help other people as well. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And thanks again for the interview. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.